I'm honored and blessed to have friends of mine in the industry that I value, and I'm very strict, and everyone knows I'm very particular on who I network with and who I bring on any interviews I do, and I vouch for them. But I have Jeff Cichocki. Jeff, did I say that right? Cichocki?
No, but nobody ever gets it right.
How do you say it? I want to get it right.
It's pronounced Schachowski, like S-H-A, Shah, and then husky like a dog.
Schachowski. That's easy.
Yeah, it doesn't look anything like it.
Compared to my last name. But let me introduce Jeff Schachowski to you guys first, and I'll do an introduction for Jeff Watson. And just let you know who they are. Jeff Schachowski started his real estate business 16 years ago as a flipper. And for the past 13 years, he's been lending too. And I know Jeff is doing a ton of stuff. He has a couple of masterminds with his partner. He runs a hard money lending business called REI Funding. He's very ethical and honest hard money lender, one of the best in the industry. I'm lucky enough to be in a mastermind with him. He's done a lot in his life. He's like running 3 masterminds called the REI Circle of Trust and an annual networking event, Cruise for Real Estate Investors called Generational Wealth Voyage. So he's passionate about real estate investing and learning ever since he started. And Jeff himself attends more than 10 events a year. His leadership advice and guidance through the Green Bay Whiskeria and Central Whiskeria in Wausau, right, Wisconsin. So thanks so much, Jeff Schachowski, for being on with us. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to having a great conversation with you. And my little friend on here, I want to introduce to you somebody who I've looked up to in the industry a long time, and I've known him through the industry. We run in the same circles because we do things the right way. Is Jeff Watson. Jeff is an attorney in Ohio who I work very close with a lot of people who work with Jeff. He's been active in the trial hearings. He's very involved in Washington, D.C., in the Dodd-Frank and Seller Finance Coalition with likes like Eddie Speed and Note School. He's involved with Quest IRA. He's on the board there, if I remember right. He's also spoke at the same event I spoke at. He's been part of real estate investors since 1994, investing both in residential and commercial properties through multiple market cycles. That's important, guys. A lot of people in this industry in the last 10, 12 years, when it's been a great cycle, I like to look at the people who've been in this industry through a couple market cycles. I hate to show my age, but I'm in this 30 years. This isn't like, this is real gray hair. So I've been through 2 market cycles. So Jeff has been through that too. He understands how to protect himself, how to protect his investors, how to protect lenders. He currently represents established real estate investors in commercial and residential matters when transactions involve self-directed IRA accounts. It's very important. He's definitely a leader. He's probably the #1 leader I look up to in this industry for doing due diligence the right way, doing legal paperwork the right way, private lending the right way, wholesaling the right way. And Jeff is somebody you definitely want to follow. He's got his own law practice. I know Jeff is he's a counsel to the National Real Estate Investors Association. He's also general counsel and co-founder of RealFlow LLC, which I'm sure you've all heard of, which made the Inc. 500 list in 2011. Okay, and he currently advises 5 different national training and education. This was so impressive to me when I read this. 5 different national training and education organizations, because I do a lot of education, with a membership of over 200,000 investors, guys. That means something, all right? So Jeff authors his own email newsletter. I get it. It's one of those newsletters I read cover to cover, and I save them, and I go back to them, and I tag them so I can go back to them because Jeff is an authority in the industry. So you want to get on watsoninvested.com and check that out. And you want to definitely follow Jeff besides this, because Jeff is a slew of information, not only locally, nationally, but he's also involved in Washington, D.C. with regulators on dealing with what we're dealing with. And my business personally changed back in about 2010 or 11, I think, when Dodd-Frank came into play. I used to do seller finance into owner occupants, and now I really do it to investors. And Jeff is a big part of that. So guys, if you have questions here, ask him in the chat box. I will make sure that we all answer them. So once again, thank you so much, Jeff and Jeff, for being on. I appreciate you guys being here.
My pleasure.
I'm honored.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely honored to be with both of you, because it's funny that you say you look up to us. And honestly, I look up to both of you. So
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah, both of you guys are people that I use as barometers in the industry to make sure that I'm keeping it between the guardrails, if you know what I mean. And Jeff and I have done a lot of work together in the last year. Looking forward to doing a lot more work together in the next few years. And it's just, and this, I guess I'm going to lead with a big takeaway. Okay. I'm just going to lead with it. Surround yourself with people that make you bring your A game every day.
Wow.
And that's what you guys help me do, is you make me bring my A game every day. I mean,
love it.
I've been thinking about this particular call, this particular presentation for a couple of days. Actually, I even prepared changed around a slide deck to make it really relevant in case I got a chance to even do that. So yeah, I came prepared because I had to bring the A game today because I knew I had you guys with me.
I would love that. I mean, the slides are awesome.
Yeah.
Guys, I think I want the audience to know, because there's a lot of people on right now, and there's going to be a lot of people this goes out to, and it's going to go on, I'm going to send it to emails, because I think we did this one a little differently and didn't just do an interview. I want to really get it out there. And why is because I think we've talked about it, is we're so passionate about people doing things the right way. That's what it should have been called. People doing things, investors doing things the right way. When I teach raising private money, I always teach, look out for your investors first before you look out for yourself. And I think we've talked about it third party, and it's all been some of the biggest concerns I've seen. And I want to get your guys' big concerns, because you're in the business a lot. And Jeff, you being on the board of Quest, which is the biggest custodian out there right now. You're talking to them and what they've seen. I know the paperwork that I've seen as far as lenders. I've had problems with people coming to me after the fact and saying, "Hey, Dan, I lent this so-and-so investor money." And I mean, I've gotten everything from, they don't give them a mortgage and a note. They didn't give them any due diligence. They didn't run title search. They didn't do insurance. They didn't list the wife. The person's married. They didn't list the wife. They did it to an owner occupant. What are some of the biggest issues you're seeing? And I'll ask you both separately. What are some of the biggest issues you're both seeing right now that you can warn people, as far as like level one, this is what you want to do if you're going to lend your money or your IRA money?
Let's go in alphabetical order. That means Jeff C goes before Jeff W.
I'm a Z, so I'm always last.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say I've had some pretty similar experiences as Dan's had in helping clean up messes. I mean, I'm not a practicing attorney. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a CPA. I'm not any of those things. I'm just a guy who cares about the people that he works with, and trying to figure out how to do things, so that everybody has an opportunity to win, not just one person in the party, which unfortunately seems to happen a lot. I've run into deals where the private investor who doesn't know any better allows the real estate investor who's borrowing the money to generate the paperwork, do a kitchen table closing, never even record the mortgage and note that they created, end up with something else coming along, and somehow another lien or judgment gets recorded, and now the mortgage and notes in second. And I mean, the biggest thing I ever see is just the fact that people just like don't do paperwork. I mean, never mind doing it right, they just don't even do it half the time. And that's been the number one thing I've had to help people get cleaned up and get title companies and attorneys involved to help rearrange and get things done. I've seen people take mortgages on properties they don't even own because they bought it from a wholesaler, and the deeds never got recorded to show the transfer, which invalidates the mortgage, because now you've got a mortgage recorded against a property that the guy you took out the mortgage doesn't own. And so you got to clean up those messes. I mean, these are just simple, basic things that, should have been taken care of in a normal closing, and just don't.
And how would you
And
how do you protect yourself against, because people are on here. I mean, there's a lot of people I see on here that are experienced, but I do see some new people on here. I know how I would protect myself and how I always tell my students to protect themselves, but what would you tell people to protect themselves if hey, I got money, I have $100,000 in my IRA, my self-directed IRA or solo 401k, and I want to lend it out because I go to local REIA meetings and everyone there has deals they want me to lend my money to.
Yep.
How would I protect myself?
Well, the easy thing, of course, is always have a title company and or a competent attorney involved to get that paperwork done. Never, ever, ever let the investor, the real estate investor, the buyer generate the paperwork. It's almost never leaning in anyone's favor other than that borrower, which means that if anything's going to go sideways and screwy, the person who's going to take it in the shorts is the guy who took the biggest risk with the money. So you got to get the competent team put in place.
And that's the answer that's exactly the answer I was looking for. Is I always tell people, I said, you're in the business to be in business. You have to treat this like a business. You need a great attorney on your side that understands this business, that understands how to lend, how to foreclose, how to evict. You need all those attorneys. If they're not the same, you need separate. You need a title company. You need your realtors. You need your property managers. Because you need to do your due diligence, because somebody told your property is worth $200,000 doesn't mean it's worth $200,000. And I've seen that many times where people lend way too much money on a property because somebody told them it was worth that kind of money. So Jeff, you must, I mean, oh my God, because you're an attorney of friends of mine in the note business. I don't want to mention what happened to them, but how many people have given money and not gotten collateral? I mean, what have you seen? How do you
I've seen stuff that literally I've gotten sick over it. I've literally gotten sick over it. And I mean, Jeff and I've had some private conversations because, you know, I'm proud to say that Jeff has entrusted me and my colleague Natalie to build his private lending documents to where I think they're the flat out best in the business. There's nobody out there that's got better set of documents and so on than Jeff C. He had some really good stuff to start with, and then we just made it better. We really poured into it to make it better. And he got that way, and I'm going a long way around, but I'm getting to my point. Jeff got that way because he spent the time to educate himself on how to be a good private lender. There are some good resources out there to learn how to be a good private lender. There's a lot of free information offered by Quest Trust Company. You knew I'd have to talk about that. You knew I'd have to talk
I agree.
about that.
Yeah. I'll give you a thumbs up. I would say, listen.
They get you on there. They get your brain. They get you to dump your brains. They go out and they get the best in the nation and provide education, and they provide it at very low cost or free.
Right.
The other resource out there, and he only teaches this once a year, is a dear friend of ours by the name of Dykes Botiford. Assets101.com is his website. He has, I think, the best hard money lending class out there. And I've probably taken that class 5-6 times. And Jeff, you've probably taken it more times than I have.
I haven't taken it quite as many, but I've taken it just a touch behind you. And I got to say, I would agree, because I've even gone out of my way to try to find other hard money courses to buy, if for no other reason, just to try to compare notes.
They're not out there.
Just nobody that even comes close to what he teaches.
And so what I'm doing is I'm building the same principles, but for in the self-directed IRA space. So let me just tell you some of the tragedies I've seen in the last 8 months. A couple lent most of their self-directed retirement account to a person that either lived in Detroit or Chicago, either went with the name of Yvette or Yvonne with 2 different last names. They always trusted this person to prepare the paperwork, this borrower to prepare the paperwork. They always trusted this person to get the mortgages recorded. And when they dug into it, they realized that they didn't even know the person's right name.
Wow.
The properties that were supposedly collateral had huge, massive back tax liens on them. Houses that had been there had been demolished or just destroyed. It was just, and I ended up having to explain to him in writing, all your loans are worthless. You've given away all the money that you spent decades saving in your IRAs and 401ks. It's all gone. And then what triggered this was a post I put on Facebook just a couple of weeks ago, Dan, and you saw it and you were like, yeah, we got to do something about this. One of my best friends preeminent real estate title attorney, foreclosure attorney in Cleveland, Ohio, named partner at a big law firm for so many years, called me up and said, this case you referred to me, from an IRA lender to a borrower in Cleveland, Ohio. He said, it's terrible. It's ugly. The borrower promised to do the paperwork. The borrower promised to record the mortgage. It turns out he never recorded the mortgage. He did sign the note. He did send the note back. But after this attorney got involved and began his legal proceedings to collect on the money, 5 other lenders came forward and said, hey, wait a second, I lent on that same property too.
Wow. And it would have been protected if they recorded the mortgage.
Nobody recorded their mortgages.
Oh my.
The guy that came to me that I had to send it to my buddy Herb because there's a little bit of a conflict because I'd done something in the past for this borrower in Cleveland, just something so tiny, but I knew it would be a potential conflict. So I had to hand it over to Herb, and Herb just called me up and he said, I am so glad that you got this thing to me when you did. He says, we're first in line. We'll get our guy made whole, but everybody else is screwed.
Oh man. Oh my God.
And I look at it and I just go, folks, if you don't listen to anything else I say, you can tune me out after this. Please understand this. You've spent decades working, saving, contributing to your IRAs and your 401ks. Take a few weeks or months understanding and learning how to do private lending, understanding and learning what documents you need. And Jeff and I will probably get into what documents we think you need, or we strongly believe you need. Learn what to do, because you've got a few months to learn how to do it so that you don't throw away decades of your hard work. Because there are so many people out there who either with good intentions but bad execution, or with bad intentions and great execution, want to separate you from your money.
That's so true. That's so true. And I would say you said it perfectly just now. Some people have good intentions, but they just don't know how to do the paperwork the right way.
Or they don't know how to run the deal the right way. They don't know how to do their comps. They don't know how to do the rehab, the whole bit, And that's where Jeff's got patience that I don't have. Jeff's got the ability to, to take a youngster and go, you might want to look at your comps again. You might want to look at your rehab scope of work again. You just, me, I'm just like, nope, get away.
That's why I think it makes Jeff and I, like, to be a lender. I think going through the industry for us to be an investor for so many years, I've screwed up so many deals myself because the values I got wrong, the rehab estimate I got wrong. I mean, I've done close to 3,000 transactions myself now. So by looking at these transactions, in fact, today was one of the worst. I had a miserable day. I'll tell you what happened. I hate not doing a deal. Like, it drives me nuts not to do a deal from somebody I like and I value. I looked at 2 deals today, and both of them, one, somebody got into a deal they shouldn't have got into. Their rehab estimate is probably $60,000 over what they expected. They're probably going to lose money. They think it's worth a lot more than it is. And it's, they want a second mortgage on this. And I just, even if I was to buy out the first and do it, I just couldn't do the deal. I said, there's no way I could do it. Then I got a call for another one. And I just said, the numbers, you're looking to piecemeal a deal together, and I can't do anything for you. So it drove me nuts not to do a deal. But I see so many investors, and Jeff, you probably see this too. I see so many investors that will do whatever they can do to make a deal work when it just doesn't work. And if a hard money lender, if I tell you a deal's I'm not going to fund it, it's probably because you shouldn't be doing the deal to begin with. So the best part of having a good lender like Jeff or myself, right, is we're a second set of eyes on there for you. If we tell you that deal is not right, we're not going to fund it. It means if we're not going to fund it, means you probably shouldn't do the deal, right? That's what it means. But where I'm seeing, it's unfortunate because one is I don't like, and Jeff Watson, you understand this. I mean, you're fighting in Washington D.C. with, overregulation with Dodd-Frank, and I don't like overregulation. But there's sometimes I think, we have people out there and they're acting like Keystone cops, and they're taking advantage of people, and that's what causes the industry to need that overregulation.
But I'm going to pick up with something you just said, and I want everybody in the audience to listen carefully. if Dan or Jeff C turns you down on your deal, then don't go looking for another lender saying, oh, you know, my previous lender, they backed out at the last minute. They couldn't come through and I got to get this thing closed in 3 days or less, or I'm going to lose the deal. You know what? Just stop and go, wait a second. Maybe this isn't a good deal, because I see a lot of beginning investors, a lot of beginning lenders get hoodwinked by this. Oh, my other lender, he couldn't do it at the last minute. I got to close this thing in 3 days or less. And I'm going to tell you, if you need to borrow money in a hurry from me or one of my clients, my answer is no.
Mhm.
There's got to be a reason, because as Hire Quincy and I were talking about this on Saturday, good deals always find the money.
Exactly. And
If
you,
it's not finding money, it's not a good deal.
and you as an investor, the first thing, I think we were talking earlier, I don't even know if we were recording yet, but as an investor, the first thing you should be looking for is to take care of your lenders. All right. If you take care of your lenders, you will never, ever have to ask for money in your life. Your lenders will be knocking on your constantly. That's my biggest issues. When I have lenders on my deals, they're always asking me if I have anything to put their money into, because they don't like holding their money, but they want to, they can care less about the returns. That's the last thing they generally care about. One is they care about the person, the operator. Two is they care about the deal making sense. And then the last thing they care about is how much they're really making. You know, that's really the last thing they care about. If they want these high returns, they're generally high risk takers and they're not doing their due diligence. But I mean, I know for me, I see what I saw happen, and I hate to use this because there are some really good meetup groups and REIAs out there. I hate to say this, but there are some REIAs where people are just being taken advantage of. And that's where I see this, you know, you get a couple of people in REIAs, they don't get deals, they have some money in their pocket. And then you have, you know, some operators that are REIAs kind of taking advantage of these people and just, hey, you lend money to us and we'll lend it to this one and we'll be the broker, we'll be in the middle. And I think you really have to do your due diligence on these REIAs. And here's the other thing: how many people, when they borrow money from a private lender, or I should say this, when they actually give their money, because we're turning this around, when they give their money to an investor out there that's doing fix and flips, buying notes, doing anything, how many people are actually doing due diligence on those people? I'm telling you now, you can run a Google search. This is a basic, forget about a PACE or a bankruptcy search, but you could just run a basic Google search on some people that I've watched rip millions and millions of dollars off of some investors. If you just did a basic Google, type their name into Google, you'll see that they have 10, 20, 30 judgments against them for not paying people back. And they still are out there and they're still doing this. I mean, like, there's a saying out there, and I can't remember. A fool is somebody who parts. What was a fool with their money parts? I don't know how it goes. Maybe one of you guys are smarter than me. You remember that saying?
A fool and their money are easily parted.
There you go.
And the question I always ask is how the two to get together with to begin with, you know. But you know, anyhow.
Well,
go ahead, Jeff.
I was gonna say that the best piece of advice I've ever been given was that sometimes the best deal you'll ever do in your whole life is the one you don't. And that works, right? And that works as an investor if you're the buyer, flipper, landlord, and that works if you're the lender. That one saying alone covers all the due diligence by itself. You got to make sure it's going to work for you.
It's so true. Don't try to shoehorn yourself into a deal. But let's get into what paper. Well, when you look for a borrower, guys, what do you look for? Let's first go what you guys look for, both of you, in a borrower. Like, you know, and I don't know, you know, maybe you do on occupants, maybe you do personal names. I don't know. So let me ask you what, and I'll even mention, I'll go last and I'll say what I look for in a borrower. But what do you both look for in a somebody you want to lend money to?
It's actually
I'll go
easy.
first because I'll keep it the shortest.
Yeah, go ahead.
I look for someone that that is competent, and I look for someone that has people that I trust vouching for them. You know, that I'm not getting them in a vacuum, but that somebody else who has done business with them knows them, and it's somebody that I trust and respect, and so on. Because birds of a feather flock together, and the last thing I'll tell you is it's somebody that and this is where I've gotten a lot smarter in the last few years, is my gut. If my gut instinct says something's wrong and I can't figure it out, there's still something wrong, and I back out. Yep.
That's great. That is great. You must have my wife standing next to you because she's the one with the gut. She's like, there's something about that person. Stay away. And she's generally right. I just hate to tell her that. Hopefully she's not watching this. So. Jeff C., what about you? What do you look for?
So generally speaking, I have two questions. Now, the questions get fairly deep, but just to kind of keep it at a basic level, there are two things that an investor has to do in order to qualify for a loan from me. And if they can't get through these first two, I don't care what the rest of the questions are, because the deal's dead. And the first one has to do with character and integrity. My first question is all about you. I actually have a question in my application that says, why should I lend money to you? And that's a weird question to put in the app, but people will answer it to the best of whatever they believe about themselves. And that question is so telling, because it gives me the ammunition to actually go do some of the background and research to help figure out their character and integrity.
Wow.
So character and integrity is number one to me, even more than experience, because even if someone doesn't have the right amount of experience, I can always try to help one that does. I can always try to bring in one to fill that gap on the experience side. But if this person doesn't have character and integrity, it doesn't matter who I partner with. It doesn't matter who they are. The deal's dead at question number one. And question number two is, so tell me about the deal. And the answer that I get every single time is a question. They never answer it right away. They always say, well, what do you want to know? And my answer to their question is, I want to know what you know. So tell me what you know. And the problem that I run into on question number two is that most people haven't done enough due diligence to buy it, to know it's actually a really good deal, which is why that's question number two. And if they can get through those first two things, the rest of it's gravy, because we know it's a good person. We know it's a good deal. Now I just have to document it. And that's the easy part.
That is awesome. I appreciate you said that, because my biggest thing, well, it's funny you say that, because question number one that you ask, I don't ask that question, but generally I don't lend to as many people as probably you do. I keep my lending network pretty small. I don't want to have headaches. I don't want to chase people around. I want to know who I'm lending to. So I learned a long time ago that, like a job interview, I kind of watch people. I kind of see what they do. Before I lend somebody, if they call me up cold on the phone the first time, I generally won't lend to them. I want to watch them. So I look at how they are on social media, how they are with their family, how they are with their wife, how they are with their kids, how they act in public. And I kind of get to know them, and generally will not do business with somebody for at least 6 months. So I call it the courting process, because I'm not a hard money lending business where I'm looking for as many people as possible. I have a network of people I like to lend to. Once again, it's character, it's ethics, it's their morals. I want to see who they are, and I want to make sure they're taking care of their investors. I'm okay with the crap hitting the fan for an investor, but what do they do to take care of their investors? Do they communicate with their investors, to their lenders? Did they make it right? Communication is everything. I mean, because things do go awry. We understand as lenders, we're getting involved. It's a risk, right? There's no guarantees here. But are they communicating with us? Are they trying to make it right? I'll do the basic background checks on them, but it's the same exact thing. I actually asked that question you asked. I said, tell me about your deal. And if they haven't done their due diligence, and when I teach people how to raise private money, that's one of the things I always teach them, is provide all the due diligence on the deal. Don't ever have a lender ask you, what are the comps, if you can't give them to them. If you're investing outside of your market or in any market, let them know exactly why you're investing in that market. Why is it a good emerging market? What makes that market, a great market for you? And if you don't know, you shouldn't be investing in there. So I shouldn't be drawing that out of you. If I have to start asking, what are the comps? What's the scope of work? What's the draw schedule? Who's on your team? Who are your contractors? Who's the realtor? Where did you get your comps? Why are you in this market? If I have to start asking those questions, you're not somebody I want to lend to, because you didn't take 5 minutes I mean, literally 5 minutes to do your own due diligence, then you're probably not the right person. But on my side, as far as who I lend to, it's generally I only lend now to non-owner occupants, fix and flippers, landlords. I love seller financing. I love selling rental properties to investors, holding a note for them. That's generally my niche, right? Take a non-performing asset, turning it into a performing asset, and selling it on seller financing to an investor, to a non-owner occupant. Generally lend to an LLC. Now, since I mentioned that, I'm going to go into this, Jeff, because this is something I learned a few years ago, and Jeff will probably tell you. When you lend to a person and they're married, how important it is to make sure that the husband or wife both sign those documents.
Well, let's
It
ask.
happened to me. That's why I'm asking. Because
Let me ask this question.
I screwed it up.
In what state what state do the borrowers live in? Because that's going to matter. And I'm going to tell you that the mortgage, at a minimum, the mortgage or deed of trust has got to be signed by their spouse. That husband or wife could know absolutely nothing about the business. They could be a busy professional in another industry. I'm sorry, if it's a piece of collateral that's titled in your name, or your spouse brought it into the marriage and it's joint property or community property, they got to sign the mortgage at a minimum. I want to know more about them. I want to know, are they a team? Are they on your team as far as bringing in income, or are they off your team as far as bringing in income? Things like that. So you want to know that stuff. But yes, I don't need him to sign the note, but I need him to have to sign the security instrument, the deed of trust or the mortgage. Absolutely.
And I wanted to bring that up, guys, because to be perfectly honest with you, I'm going to be honest. I screwed it up. It was probably about 4 or 5 years. Nothing happened. But I screwed it up, and it could have gone bad for me because I didn't have the wife sign. And this was actually in Delaware at the time. I didn't have the wife sign it, and my attorney's like, "Whoa, you need to have the wife sign this." And it went okay, but now we make sure we handle that. And this is why it's important to have someone like Jeff handling your docs for you, because he might upfront say, "Well, is this person married?" Now, is that even if they own a corporation, the husband and wife both need to sign?
If the collateral is titled in a corporation or an LLC, then I don't need the spouse to sign the mortgage or the deed of trust as to their dower interest. I don't need that, because I need whoever is the authority figure for that entity to sign. And the one trick I'm going to tell you, and this is where people don't like me, but I'm really getting to be a stickler on this. If you're coming to borrow from me and that property is in a trust, I'm going to insist on seeing the trust agreement, because a lot of you are using trust agreements that are crap. Mm-hmm. They're absolutely crap. You don't know how to use them right. And I want to make sure I've actually got a good lien on your property, or my lender clients got a good lien on your property. So I'm going to want to underwrite your trust. And you may not like me. I don't care. Oh, by the way, if you got an LLC, just because it's registered with your Secretary of State don't mean squat. Where's your operating agreement? Where's your borrowing authorization? Where's your tax ID number? Because without that, you don't have it. You're showing up at the party half dressed,
Sounds like I got to just turn over all my documents to you as well, Jeff, and let you just handle it for me as well, because I'm on the same page. I'm always asking for that stuff, but that's great. And you know what? It's great that you mentioned about the trust, because I spent a lot of money to have my trust done. And there's a lot of people out there right now. Once again, it's being taught, buy your properties in a trust, set up a new trust for every account, but they're not, just like your LC docs, they're not set up properly. I look at LC docs. If I was an attorney, I would love to take you to court and pierce those LLC docs, because they're just a joke right now. And we can do a whole nother show on LLC docs and how to do them.
And John Hire and I have talked about this, and he and I are probably going to do something later this year. That'd be awesome. On involving litigation and asset protection, because I've got 30 years of plaintiff trial work under my belt. I was chasing ambulances and running rental properties at the same time. And so I know what that looks like. I know how to get through this stuff. And people need to keep your eyes out for when Hire and I can finally get on the phone together and figure that out. But the point is, you're right, Dan. So many people don't know to run their entities the right way. And yeah, you might borrow in your LLC, but if you're not running your entity the right way, I'm going to be able to punch through that. If you're buying your groceries, if you're taking your kids out to lunch using your LLC checking account or your LLC debit card, I might get you just from that alone. You know, even if I didn't get a personal guarantee on you. So you got to know what you're doing. And this is one of the things that Jeff and I have collaborated on for quite a bit over the last few months, is getting a very detailed checklist and process down to make sure that when he makes a loan, it's a good loan. And to make sure that when his borrower borrows, they're a legit, buttoned up, properly run business as a borrower. Because that's how an educated, well-trained borrower is your best customer as a private lender.
I love that.
Because they're going to come back to you over and over again, because they've built that relationship. They've got that debt of gratitude to you. They feel like you're there to help make sure that they succeed, because if they succeed, then you know you're going to get paid off. So there's a win-win to that. And this is, you know, this is hours and hours of conversation between Jeff and I on this stuff.
Oh,
And, you know, and I could go on, and I better just stop right there.
You know,
Jeff, you got a wealth of it.
I actually had a borrower recently, like within the last 2 or 3 weeks, asked to borrow some money on a.
Were you breaking up, Jeff?
Yeah, the Puerto Rican Wi-Fi is not working for you.
LLC
you gotta get the squirrel to start running in that wheel.
There you go. Come back. You're back here now. So say it again, Jeff.
Okay, so I had a borrow 2 to 3 weeks ago who came to me, made it past question 1, made it past question 2, asked for the LLC docs, and their answer was, I have a single member LLC, I don't need any. And I said, well, yes, you do. And of course, I tend to spend a lot more time with my borrowers when they're uneducated on a topic than a lot of lenders will do, because I do believe that the easiest way to make sure that my loan is going to be successful is to help educate the people that I'm going to do business with. And ultimately, if I'm the guy that's teaching them how to do things, I also know that they're going to run their business the way that it should be run, because they're following proper guidance and direction, which of course is guidance and direction that I've gotten from guys like Jeff and guys like Dykes and guys like John Heyer and, you know, some of these other leaders in the industry that have kept me on the straight and narrow all these years. But, you know, thinking you don't need an operating agreement or any other form of documentation other than I went to the state's website and I filled out, you know, the registration form. I mean, that doesn't cut it. You're dead in the water in a lawsuit.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, guys, once again, I'm going to keep asking questions because these guys have just been, it's great because usually I have to do all the talking. These guys have been awesome. But stuff that's blowing me away. And Jeff Watson and I are going to get on a call because I think he might have to do my paperwork now. But ask your questions in that chat box, guys, so I can ask these guys, because this is definitely this is like a 5-star event right now to have these two on the call at the same time. But
let me do this while they're typing in their questions. I want to pivot this, and this is going to be between Jeff C and I on this one. And I'm going to talk about it from my perspective, what I consider to be the essential documents that a private lender has to use. And I'm going to talk about it from my perspective, and I want Jeff to talk about it from his perspective. And I'm going to start with the most obvious document, which is the promissory note. You know, it needs to be well written. It needs to have clear language in it. Who is borrowing? How much are they borrowing? How are they paying it back? And how am I calculating the interest that I'm going to get paid on this loan? Is it all just simple interest? How does it compound? How does it accrue if you default? And is there any additional interest in the form of an equity or profit participation? It all has to be spelled out. And I think a well-written note solves so many problems, and I see so few of them. And Jeff, I want you to talk about that, then we'll move into the next document.
Yeah, I mean, the note is the promise to pay. And if you don't have a good promise to pay, what's the likelihood anyone's going to pay? I mean, that's like number one. There's nothing more important than the promise to pay. You know, the obvious number two is the mortgage or the deed of trust to protect the promise to pay. And so, you know, you need something that's bulletproof on those two documents. I'm trying to futz with my phone while you're talking as well, because I'm trying to pull up our newest set of lender instructions that we send to the title company.
Oh, don't get there yet. Don't spoil the fun, man. Don't spoil the fun.
Well, I was going to use it as a cheat sheet because it's grown a ton lately.
I would love to hear this. I call it the power of five is what I send out.
Yeah. So the second document that Jeff alluded to is the security instrument. It's either the mortgage or the deed of trust. Nationally, it's referred to as a mortgage. It's the written documentation that identifies the specific collateral that is owned by the borrower and that is being pledged as security for the loan. So that if the borrower doesn't pay, you can go take that property from them through the legal method of foreclosure. It's absolutely imperative that there's two key things here. That it's clear that the specific promissory note is referenced in that mortgage or deed of trust. The second thing is that the legal description of the collateral, not just the address, not just the parcel number, not just the tax ID number, not just the AFN number, not just the IFN number, but the actual meets and bounds legal description, the sublot, whatever it is that you've done in your county and state, is included in that mortgage or deed of trust. And it's imperative. Now, I'm not going to get into this because this is a whole day-long diatribe between the difference between a mortgage and a deed of trust and how they work and what's different between them. But the point is this: both of those documents basically say, if you don't pay, you lose this property. We will take it back to you by force of law. Take it back from you by force of law. We will then sell it and take that money to pay against your note and go from there. So that leads me to the third document that is, in my opinion, absolutely crucial, and that is the personal guarantee. There is, from a borrower's perspective, that is one of the most dangerous documents you can sign if you're borrowing from a commercial lender like a bank. From a lender's perspective, that is an incredibly powerful document, because that personal guarantee means that whatever you have now, whatever it is, whatever you acquire in the future, whatever that may be, paychecks, anything, your job, a 401k program that rolls out, whatever, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, I can come after you and get that from you to satisfy the debt that is still owed under that note. And you have to remember, the interest ticking clock in that note does not stop ticking until the note is paid in full or forgiven, one of the two. So there's always this, until the note's paid in full, there's always this quest to go satisfy it. And that personal guarantee goes beyond a foreclosure, goes beyond the auction and getting the house back and so on. It continues to let me pry into you. I can repo your automobile and have it auctioned. I can garnish your bank accounts. I can go seize your tax refund. I can go after all sorts of things with that personal guarantee. You've got a house in another state? Great. I'm going to go use that personal guarantee as a way of going after that.
Excellent. I'll use that as well. So is there more? I have two more docs. I'm just waiting to see what you guys say.
Well, then there's another doc that we like to use, which is the assignment of rents.
There you go.
And the assignment of rents is powerful because what it says is, and I put the assignment of rents both in my security instrument and outside my security instrument, because I want to be able to say, hey, I don't even have to go to foreclosure court. I don't have to go seek a court-appointed receiver. I can just simply notify the tenants, hey, pursuant to this document signed by your landlord, signed by my borrower, your landlord, I get to now say, pay me the rent. Oh, I'll go tell him you paid me, so he can't evict you, but you got to pay me because he hasn't been paying me. So that assignment of rents is a powerful, powerful document. And it lets me continue to grab the cash flow. And it's a neat document in respect to this. You may not want to foreclose on that property. That property may have some characteristics to it that you don't want. It may have an environmental contamination issue. It may have some other stuff that may say, I really don't want it, but you can use that assignment of rents to continue to harvest the cash flow off that property to pay down on that debt.
Excellent. And then there's one more I'm waiting on.
Well, I'm gonna go to the one I put Jeff off with before, and he's looking it up to see the most recent version that's come from my colleague and I, and I'm sure Natalie's touched it up a whole lot more since I've seen it last.
She has.
Yeah, I figured. That's her strength. It's something that I'm gonna ramble on this one, but I'm gonna try and get dead in here. It's what I call closing instructions. It is the written instructions that I, as the private lender or counsel to the private lender, send to the title company, send to the escrow company, send to the closing attorney, that specifically says, hey, you got to agree in writing by signing this document and send it back to me. You're going to play by these rules. This is how I want the loan closed. This is how you're going to do things. This is how I want my documents executed. This is the way I want you to properly record them. This is what I want you to tell the borrower that they have to do, blah, 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 blah. And it's a long document, 2, 3 pages long. And the whole point behind this, and I want everybody to hear me clearly, when you use closing instructions, you are taking control and telling the title company, the closing attorney, how to do it, which means your deal is closing at a title company, which means you have a closing attorney closing your deal, which means you have an independent party who's licensed and has a legal obligation to make sure that your money is not dispersed until the note is properly executed, until the deed of trust or mortgage is properly executed, until the personal guarantee, until the assignment of rents, until everything else is signed, ready to go. Then your money's released. Then they record the documents, and you're not trusting the borrower buddy friend of yours that is charming and it's got a great suit and nice story and so on. And no, you're not trusting them to do anything. You're not trusting them to do anything. You are putting it in the hands of somebody who's got a license, an insurance policy to back it up if they screw it up. That's who you're making sure handles the closing of the deal.
That's excellent. Now, let me ask you about my one other doc, if you use it at all. Do you guys use confession of judgments at all?
Actually, I do not. In Wisconsin,
I've been trying to get him to do that.
We can't in Wisconsin. It's actually illegal. I've looked up all the statutes on it.
Okay.
It's illegal in Wisconsin. Yes, but it's legal in Illinois.
Correct, which is another state I do business in. And so our new paperwork, we have added it for the stuff we're doing in Illinois.
So we refer to them as a cognovate promissory note, and the confession of judgment language is built right into the promissory note. Now, that's only in the minority of states that allow you to do that. And they're only states that have that are east of the Mississippi. Okay. Anybody west of the Mississippi will not let you do a cognovate promissory note or a confession of judgment and so on. And that's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. So what the confession of judgment is, and I'll explain this for everybody because they're curious. And Dan, you know how this works really well.
Yeah.
If the borrower defaults on the note, then the lender can file a lawsuit alleging default on the terms of the note, breach of contract, default on the note, and they can have a friendly lawyer confess judgment, file an answer with the court saying, yep, you're right. I've been authorized by the borrower under this confession of judgment clause to file this confession of judgment, this cognovate promissory note confession, saying that, yes, I'm in default. And so you can file the lawsuit Monday morning, file the confession of judgment Monday afternoon, and by Wednesday, you've got your docketed judgment entry journalized in the county recorder's books, putting a lien on everything that borrower owns.
That's powerful.
It's very powerful.
On the eastern side of the Mississippi, damn it.
Yeah. And so And so that's, and so when I explained that to Jeff for when, the state he's beginning to lend in there in Illinois, he's like, I've never seen this. We're not allowed to do this in Wisconsin. I go, yeah, I know, but we can do this in Illinois. So we're going to do it, just one more belt and suspender, one more chain tying the load down so it doesn't slip or get away from us.
Exactly.
And we just want to have it. I mean, and folks, I prepare for something to go wrong. Okay. I'm a firm believer in Murphy's Law. If it can go wrong, it will go wrong. So I want to be prepared for it to go wrong, and therefore it's not going to be a problem. It's just going to be a situation.
And exactly. And what we see is it's unfortunate. We've all been in the industry a long time. So we've seen a lot of this happen, but it's unfortunate that a lot of new investors come in, they go to the local meetup groups, the local REIA groups, or they find, a friend is doing their first, second deal, and they, who do you borrow money from? Your friends and family. So it's like, hey, Jim, John, Mary, I have a deal. Can you just lend me $100,000? I'll pay you 10% of your money. And the person borrowing the money doesn't know how to do this. And that's why this webinar is so important, because a lot of people here are looking to borrow money. So you should know how to do this. You're going to go out as a professional to borrow money. And if you tell your investors you're looking to protect them, then they're going to want to lend you money that much faster. Now, the other thing I always taught, and I did this when I borrowed money, is I always took a term insurance policy and named them on my insurance policy. So I don't know if Jeff C, do you do that? I mean, do you, God forbid something happens to that person? I mean, I might not want to be partners with their husband, their wife, or I always ask him, and I say, listen, might be morbid, but what happens when you get hit by a truck?
Yeah.
And,
so
they don't have an answer.
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned.
I've done it as a borrower myself in our flipping company that we have, but I've never required it of a borrower of mine.
With some of the lending that I do in the Cleveland market with one of my other clients, where he and I co-lend together, when we have a borrower that gets more than 2 loans from us at any one time, they've got their second and third rehabs running, we then insist that they go get a term life insurance policy, and that names the lender as the beneficiary, because we're like, that's a bigger risk. We're now looking at 3 deals. Something happens to you, God forbid, bust, stroke, whatever. Your family doesn't want that burden. We want to just be paid off, and then we can make sure things get across the finish line with everybody being okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's so important. First of all, it's very cheap to do this. It's not expensive to do term policy. And it just makes you a lender. If you go out and say, Mr. and Mrs. Lender, I even did this to protect you, it just goes like Jeff said. If you can show him that you're ethical and you've done the right job to protect him as a lender, it's going to go that much further. Well, now I do have a couple questions. Let me throw this in here, and then we'll get back to this. I know I had somebody say confession of judgment not allowed in New Jersey. They use it in Pennsylvania, but let me go question. One person said, what would be an estimate for the essential documents for a new lender to do the note, security documents, all of those? I don't know if you have that information. Jeff,
I can put together that. If they go to watsoninvested.com, sign up there, get on my email list, that's the easiest way that they can also contact me that way. I can tell them that we can price it one of 2 ways. They can get the baseline template versions from me for a certain price, and then it's going to be up to them and their local counsel to dial it in, or they can invest in the time where we're going to spend a good bit of time talking through their business and understanding what they do and how they do it, what their borrowers look like, and so on. And I mean, Jeff and I are not only friends, but we've spent a tremendous amount of talking through what his business looks like. And so we've gotten his documents just dialed in precisely for what we're doing based on what city and county he's lending in and what the statute is there and how closings happen in that particular jurisdiction. And that's a lot more expensive, but we can do it. We can do either one of them.
I always say it's a lot cheaper than your biggest mistake.
Oh,
so
yes,
guys,
it is.
You're in this. If you're going to lend, or you're gonna borrow money, I cannot. And everyone knows how I feel about this. You have to invest in yourself, right? You have to. It's not expensive. If you think there's a cost to this, you're probably in the wrong business, because you want the first time you lose, it's going to be a lot more expensive than paying an attorney. And I'm all about paying an attorney to do it right.
But Dan, I want to hammer that point home. Jeff, what are you doing right now in Puerto Rico?
Well, right now I'm just lounging and being lazy because it's
That's-
ridiculously easy to be lazy in Puerto Rico.
But what have you been doing the last week in Puerto Rico?
Right. So the reason I'm in Puerto Rico is for a mastermind. It's a mastermind that my business partner and I run. We run 3 of them. And this one is made up of longtime friends that we got to know just through the industry in and of itself. And all of us do something different to a certain extent so that we can give fresh perspectives back and forth. This is one of the things for me that has made a huge, like, I can't even begin to describe how much of an impact hanging out with people that, know, like, and think like you, to really help you learn and dial your stuff in.
And the reason I asked this question is because I came back today from Atlanta after spending 2.5 days at a Gary Johnston event. And it was, and it was One Step Beyond or whatever, I don't remember, the Next Step program. And the guys that I spent time with in that room own hundreds of houses. And I'm spending time learning from them. So get that. I'm constantly investing in my own education. Dan talked about it, and I just said, wait a second. I got 2 real life examples of investing in your own education, what Jeff's doing right now and what I did over the weekend. And if we do it, why aren't everybody else should too? Is the point.
Jeff, I invest over 6 figures a year in education, mentorship, and events, right? And my goal, and I always say this to people, and anyone on here that knows me could probably type in what I always say. And my goal is always to be the dumbest person in that room. Not very hard, but it's always to be the dumbest. I always want to level up. I don't want to pound my ego and be the smartest person in the room. I always want to challenge myself. And I'm telling you what, Jeff really hit me here where I'm challenged right now. And I'm like, wow, I'm a little tiny hiney puckered right here that maybe I need to get with Jeff Watson myself and get those docs looked at. I'm going to do that myself. I've been doing lending for a long time, and I'm sure he could poke holes in my stuff. And it was done by an attorney who now I'm starting to think, well, maybe I'm not doing 100% what I should be doing. Who knows? But it's worth me paying him to go through my docs and poke holes in it, because if he could poke holes in it, don't you think a foreclosure defense attorney can poke holes in it?
Yep.
And I'm going through a situation right now in Florida where we have a note and it's literally 6 years and this attorney's just poking holes in because I lent somebody else money and we had to take it back, and it's a nightmare. So we have another question here.
I'm going to put a twist on that before we go to that question. One of my best borrowers that I lend to consistently, and I'm going to be doing my 18th and 19th loan to him in Chicago, is a foreclosure defense attorney.
Oh boy.
Just saying.
Oh boy.
So I'm either crazy or I'm good if I'll lend to him.
That's almost like an IRS agent. You got to be careful what you talk to an IRS agent about. Well, yeah. I know we could beat this. So I'm going to ask it because I want you guys to beat it up a little bit. But it says, if you were to borrow, would you be comfortable signing all those docs we talked about?
No. Nope. Wouldn't. I don't borrow the way I lend. I strap it down too tight. I wouldn't feel comfortable borrowing it. But I do use most of those same documents when I do borrow, because if I'm going to do it on that side, then I've got to be ethical and flip it around, because the last thing in the world I want to do is get caught where I used a mamby-pamby note when I borrow money from a private lender and, use a note with teeth in it. There's a couple of things I don't sign, I wouldn't sign a Cognova promissory note. Sorry, no way. But everything else I'd sign. Yeah.
Interesting. What about you, Jeff C?
So like Jeff, we tend not to borrow the exact same way that we lend. However, I'll throw a caveat in it. Part of the reason that we allow ourselves to kind of bend our own rules to a certain extent is because of the fact that we happen to know that we would move heaven and earth to pay someone back. And so our own morals and ethics, which I believe me, I understand. I could appear to be the most honest human being you've ever met in your entire life. But the truth is, you have no idea if I am or not. I'm the only one that actually knows how honest and ethical I am. And I always use the example of divorce, because you could really be in business with the best human being you've ever met in your life, and decisions will be made during that divorce based on the other person, the other spouse who's leaving the marriage. That person can be forced to make decisions they would never make on any normal situation. And that is the types of things that you're trying to protect against. But Derek and I would move heaven and earth under any circumstances, no matter how much it cost us to pay someone back. And so we do try to do a little bit more on the relationship side of things, as we're doing business with people, because we want to demonstrate it, because there is a level of trust that has to come with it. So we don't necessarily do it the same. But let me ask this question, because this is a question. I've done a webinar, I should say not a webinar, but I've spoken numerous times at REIAs on the topic of how to think like a lender so you can be a better borrower. And when I do that presentation, I always ask the room this question. And it starts out like this. Do you know anybody? Have you ever heard of a real estate investor who went out and found the most amazing deal? They went out, they got all the bids. They came in perfect. The LTV's low. Everything is, this is like the one in a lifetime deal. And this real estate investor goes home to tell their significant other that they cannot wait to lose their ass on the deal. Right? It never happens. There is no one who raises his hand because we believe it's the best, because otherwise we wouldn't have put it under contract. But yet, sometimes deals go bad, and sometimes bad stuff happens to good people. Right? And it really impacts the way that I think about things as a borrower and as a lender, because I'm always trying to keep that in my mind, because I could always screw one up. So even though I answer the question saying I borrow slightly different than the way that I lend, the question is, if you truly believe in what you're doing and you've really taken the time to go educate yourself, my question back is, well, why wouldn't you?
And that's kind of how I am with that. I was like, I don't have a problem generally signing most docs, because I know what I'm going to do. And in 30 years of doing business, I still can't believe I say that. I'm fortunate enough that I've never not paid, never ever missed a payment. Now I've lost plenty of money in my own deals, more than I care to share, but I've never not paid an investor back. So it's really important to make sure you do that. An great question came in from one of the guests here. He said, how do you know if the docs have been recorded?
That's the title company's job, and you insist on them expediting them to you. Today's technology says to me, I should be able to get back a recording receipt same day. I should be able to have, if you're an electronic county with scanning in, I should have proof of it that way. I should be able to get the actual copies of the recorded instruments very quickly thereafter. And the good news is, if I'm using the title company the way I'm telling him to, and I've got my closing instructions and I follow them, I have insurance coverage that covers me from the moment that money is released and those documents are signed until that is recorded in the correct position as a lien. I have an insurance policy ensuring that I'm going to be in first position. Even if it has not yet been filed or recorded, I'm insured as if I was.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. I hope that answers your question. That was perfect. Now, one more here, and we're going to start wrapping up soon, but I want to get this question here. In a situation when a buyer and seller share the same lawyer, should the lender and borrower have different attorneys? So if they both use you, Jeff, should they have different attorneys?
Yes. And that's a situation where if I was and unfortunately, I've not had that particular conflict. I've had all sorts of conflicts come at me. I would just simply bow out and say, you, neither one of you can use me on this deal. You got to go find somebody. Each of you got to go find somebody else, because I hope it all goes well, but I don't want to know a thing about it, because God forbid one of the clients, say the borrower says, oh, I'll go use somebody else. And so then I represent the lender against one of my borrower clients and it goes wrong. I'm dead. I'm dead.
It's not
Ohio
something-
Supreme Court will pull my license. I'm just dead.
and that's an ethical attorney telling you this. You know, I appreciate you saying that. Well, guys, I know I plan to be on here now, and we can go on this for hours and hours. Anyone on this call, I dropped Jeff Watson's info and Jeff Schachowski's. Jeff, if you want to just let people know how to follow you, you can post it here, or just let them know real quick how to follow you. But once again, let's closing statements here we'll start with Jeff Watson. Any closing statements you have for the group? I mean, this has been amazing, but any closing statements you have for the group? I'm
going to go back and repeat myself, because good lawyers do that. Because we bill by the hour and we bill by the word. It's a joke, folks. This call was free, but for the hour of time that you invested into it. The information that's been shared in this call could very well save you hundreds of thousands of dollars by not making a loan that you shouldn't make. That's well worth the hour that you invested in it. Remember this: you have spent decades saving, contributing, working towards your IRA, your 401k. Do not squander that money in mere minutes. Spend a few weeks, spend a few months getting information gathered together so that you become an educated private lender, because an educated private lender can educate their borrowers, and an educated borrower becomes a good repeat customer.
That's so powerful. Thank you so much, Jeff. And thanks for your time being here. And Jeff C., any parting words for the group? And
first, thank you guys so much for letting me be on. I did quick type in my email address and our website in case anybody's got any questions. I'm always happy to help wherever I can, as much as I can. I'm not just, kind of talk about the experiences that I've had, but always happy to, throw my 2 cents in if it'll help steer and keep somebody safe. But it kind of goes back to really what we started to say in the very, very beginning, which was the question about how do you stay safe? The first thing that almost every single real estate investor learns is to go build a team. And yet when we talk about lending, nobody ever talks about the team. But the same rule applies. You got to get the team. That means you need to have a good title company to work with. You got to have a good attorney at your back. And you got to have, unfortunately, some people have this, some people don't, but you got to have a good BS detector, kind of as number 3, right? And if you don't have that, like Dan said, his wife kind of has one in places that he doesn't. Bring in that extra person, whether it's your spouse or a friend or, just someone that you trust. Bring in someone else to kind of just take a look at what you're doing and make sure that, that BS detector isn't going off, so that, the morals and ethics are there, and that, you can kind of feel like it's a good deal. And if you do those first 3 things, you've got a major hurdle right out of the chute covered.
Well, that's awesome.
Yep.
Well, guys, why I'm so blessed and so appreciative of you two is because I talk about this all the time, and I see what's going on, and it drives me absolutely insane. And I feel for people because I see them losing, like Jeff Watson said, their life savings, their retirements, they're planning on their 401k, their kids' college, their covered out, their kids' college education, whatever. They're just working their butts off, trying so hard to grind to do the right thing. And it's not them. It's just a lack of knowledge. And that's all this call was about. I mean, we all, Jeff's, you know, in a mastermind, he coaches. I run a mastermind. I have 2 masterminds. I mentor, and Jeff Watson is busy in his law practice, and he just got home taking time away from his family to be here. And it's all because we really care about what's going on in the industry, and really care about you as human beings to actually protect your wealth, protect your families. And there are a lot of sharks out there coming after people, and it's not. And then there's the other side of people who are not sharks. They're just uneducated in the industry because they chose not to put a team together, or they tried to cheap out and go to, you know, I'll say it, LegalZoom and do $99 paperwork instead of paying an attorney. And you have to invest in yourself, guys. And I'm literally brought this is the first time I have Jeff Watson and Jeff Cichocki on my show, and I know them both. And because it's not very easy to get them both on the show, believe it or not, it's not easy. I mean, Jeff C is out in Puerto Rico. Jeff Watson's traveling, speaking all over the United States still. He doesn't stop, and he's always so caring, and he helps. He's known as the industry leader in the note space and the private lending space. If you ask about attorneys, everybody knows who Jeff Watson is, and everyone says go to Jeff Watson. So to get him on a call like this is not easy, guys. This was planned for weeks. This is not something I just came out with. So once again, I thank you both gentlemen for being on. I honor you both, and I appreciate you both more than you know. I really do. And it is an honor to be on here with you guys. And this will go out. This will be at the top of my emails. This will be on our YouTube page. I'll give it to you guys if you want to share it out, because the more we can help, this is not about money for me. This is about just giving information so we can help people and really protect selfishly, I want to protect this industry. I love this industry. It's afforded myself, and I'm sure both Jeffs, a great lifestyle. Where Jeff C could be out in Puerto Rico and Jeff Watson could travel around the world speaking. It afforded me a great lifestyle, and I want to protect it. And if we keep screwing around, the government's going to come in and they're going to start over-regulating this, and it's going to become licenses upon money grabs. And we don't want that. So once again, thank you, gentlemen, for being on. I appreciate you both. And guys, if you have any questions, you know who to reach out to. You got Jeff Cichocki's information and Jeff Watson's information. Follow Jeff Watson's, sign up for his newsletter. It's phenomenal. Read it. Make sure you read those newsletters. Tons of valuable information, and get on a schedule with him. My recommendation, I don't make any money for this. My recommendation is hire him at least for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Have him go through your paperwork. Have him set you up. It's the best investment in you can make. Before you do anything else, hire the best attorney there is. I'll see you guys soon. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great night.